For example, in the 3-minute slot reserved for objectors, the applicant, supporters and ward councillors. Please do not open your microphone until you're given permission to do so. Attendees who are using the telephone dialing function on a smartphone are asked to mute their microphone directly on their devices. Open microphones may cause feedback. To ensure that this virtual meeting runs smoothly, only one individual will be allowed to speak at a time. Any person speaking must be permitted to finish what they're saying without interruption. If I request that an individual stop speaking, they should do so immediately. Interruptions may result in you being disconnected from the meeting. If a member of the committee wishes to speak, and I ask them to indicate this via the raised hand symbol or the message board, members of the public are reminded that the message board is not for public use. Any messages left on the message board by members of the public will be disregarded by the committee members. Please note all guests will be made attendees after they've entered the meeting. A message should now have been shown on your screen to indicate that this has been done. Bearing in mind that a recording of this meeting will be posted on the Council's YouTube channel, if you are planning to speak at this meeting, you may choose to switch off your camera so that only your voice will be heard. Members of the public who are disconnected from the meeting due to technical difficulties should use the link or dialing instructions they were sent initially to return to this meeting. If a member of the committee or officer loses internet connection or power, can they please inform the clerk that this has happened via the WhatsApp group immediately, so that we can adjourn the meeting until the connection has been restored. Members of the public are welcome to record, screenshot or tweet public proceedings of the meeting. A copy of the Council's protocol for reporting and filming is available on the Council's website. During the meeting, members of the committee will not access the internet except as it relates to the official business of the meeting, send or receive emails, text messages, or tweet concerning the business of the committee to anyone outside the meeting. Please note that members may be accessing the agenda via the internet. I'll now go on to the next section, which I'd like to invite the officers to explain their roles at the meeting, and I'll start with the planning officers, and if I may start with the Director of Planning.
Good morning, Chair. My name's Simon Bevan. I'm the Director of Planning, and I will be advising the Planning Committee on general planning issues relating to the business. Thank you.
Colin Wilson.
Morning, Chair. My name's Colin Wilson. I'm Head of Regeneration for Old Kent Road, and I will be assisting I'll be assisting Troy Davis on the scheme in Ilston Road, and Tim Cutts will be assisting Alicia Chalmard on the scheme in New Kent Road.
Very good. I'll invite Troy Davis to introduce himself as well.
Morning, Chair. Troy Davies, Team Leader, Old Kent Road.
Very good. And also invite Alicia Chalmard to introduce herself.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Alicia. I'm the Case Officer for the 221 New Kent Road scheme.
Thank you. If I can ask Pip Howson to introduce herself.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Pip Howson. I'm the Team Leader for Transport Policy and Strategic Transport Planner for the Old Kent Road.
Very good. If I may also go to the legal officers, if I can invite Margaret Foley to introduce herself. Margaret. Who's the legal officer today?
Good morning, Chair. My name is Margaret Foley. I'm the legal officer for this meeting, and my role is to advise members of the committee on planning legislation and legal matters related to planning.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Margaret. And if I can also ask the clerks to introduce themselves as well. Tim?
Good morning. My name is Tim Merton. I'm the Constitutional Officer and Clerk of this committee. I'm here to minute the meeting and to advise on the procedures for hearing the items and for decision making.
Very good. And And I believe Gerald is also with us as well. Or...
Good morning, Chair. Yeah, my name is Gerald Gola. I'm also a constitutional officer, but I'm just here in the background. Tim is part of the meeting.
Very important, Gerald. Thank you. Thank you. Hope I've not missed off anyone here. And if I may, I'll now proceed along our agenda. And,
Chair.
Yes.
Just wanted to say, Tim Cutts is here. He'll be assisting with one of the items. So you may want to have Tim
I'll invite
himself. Yeah.
Tim, forgive me. I'll invite you to introduce yourself also. Thank you.
Morning, Chair. I'm Tim Cutts in the Old Kent Road planning team, assisting Alicia this morning on 221 New Kent Road.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I believe now I've covered more officers. I'll now move on to the agenda. Item 1 of the agenda is apologies. Now I have 3 apologies for Councillor Adele Morris, Cleo Soames, and Catherine Rose. I believe that's all the apologies. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair, as far as I'm aware, yes.
Very good, thank you. And I'll make mention of the reserve members later on. I now need to move on to confirmation of voting members, and I'll simply ask members to confirm that you are a voting member. If I may start with Councillor Kath Whittam, can you confirm?
Yes, I'm a voting member.
Thank you. Councillor Barry Hargroves?
Yes, I'm a voting member.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah King, reserve member?
I'm a voting member.
Thank you. Councillor Darren Morrell, reserve member? Do you confirm you're a voting member?
Yeah, I'm a voting member, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamish McCullum, reserve member?
Yes, Chair, I'm here and a voting member.
Very good. Councillor Margie Newlands, can you confirm you're a voting member?
I'm here and a voting member.
Very good. Councillor Damien O'Brien, can you confirm you are a voting member?
Voting member, Chair.
Very good. And I'm Councillor Martin Seaton. I'm also a voting member. I'll now go on to item 3 of the agenda, which is notification of any items of business which the Chair deems urgent. Now, the following additional documents have been circulated before the meetings, and the members could confirm that they have received addendum report relating to item 5.1 and 5.2 on our agenda, and also our members' pack. Can you all confirm that's happened?
I can confirm that, Chair.
Confirm, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's fine. And I'll now move on to item 4, disclosure of interest and dispensation. Does any member wish to declare any interest or dispensation in respect of any items or issues to be considered at this meeting?
No, Chair.
No, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll now move on to item 5, development management. The next item of business concerns the determination of planning applications. I would like to remind everyone of the committee's guidance and conduct of business. Officers will present the report, outline their recommendations and answer questions raised by the committee. If present and wishing to speak, the following may then address the committee for no more than 3 minutes each. One spokesperson representing any objector to the application, and by now you need to have identified a single spokesperson. If more than one objector wishes to speak, the time will be divided accordingly within the 3-minute time slot. 2, the applicant or their agent, followed by a spokesperson representing any support of the applications who live within 100 metres of the development site. And last but not least, of course, a ward councillor representing the area affected by the proposal. Each speaker should restrict their comments to the planning aspects of the proposal and should avoid repeating information which is already in the report. The meeting is not a hearing where all participants present evidence to be cross-examined by other participants. At the end of each representation, the committee may ask questions of the presenter. Speakers should lead the committee on subjects which they would welcome further questioning. Ward members in attendance and those nominated to speak on behalf of objectors, supporters and applicants may be asked to make further brief contributions in case any issue need to be clarified after they've addressed the committee. Now, this is not an opportunity to take part in the debate of the committee. And forgive me, I just lost my spot. One moment. Now, after receiving all submissions, the committee will debate the applications and consider the recommendations. This is a council committee meeting which is open to the public, and there should be no interruptions from members of the public. And finally, I'd like everyone present to know that although a planning committee comprises members of different political parties, we are not politically whipped. Our decisions are made in accordance with the Council's planning policy and based on the information contained within the relevant report, together with the consultation responses and any verbal submissions made today. How we approach this application is set out in the Development Management Report at item 5, and if members are happy to note that report, we'll move to considering the planning applications. Are you content, members? I'm going to take it that you are. Great. Thank you. Now then, can I ask the officer, considering the report on item 5.1, which is 227 to 255 Ilderton Road, London, SE1, 1 and S, which is of course, members, pages 7 to 136 of the agenda pack and the relevant pages of the addendum report. Can I invite the officer to make your presentation?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen now.
Oh, wonderful.
All right. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start now. This is the scheme here for 227 to 255 Ilderton Road. Following comments made in the pre-briefing last week, this scheme has been revised down from 254 units to 253 residential units at 35.75% affordability by habitable rooms. At the ground and intermediate levels is 3,581 square metres of industrial floor space comprising of classes B1 and B1C and B8. And then there's an ancillary internal loading yard and plant and equipment as well. This site is located on the eastern side of Ilderton Road and bounded by Rowland Street to the north, Sherratt Street to the south, and to the railway line at the east here. Beyond the railway line is the Winslade estate in the London Borough of Lewisham. On the current site is the Leatham's Food Distribution Centre. It is located within a two-storey warehouse with an ancillary office building within. As you can see on this bird's eye view, the railway line is just behind the site there, even captured with a train going past. This is a proposed development, 28 stories and 9-storey tower. And this is just the surrounding context with New Bermondsey in the background. The subject site is located within OKR 16. This allocation advocates for horizontal mixes, of which this site is where the mouse is. This is the site in relation to OKR 16, so it proposes horizontal mix. Within this type of development, floor to ceiling height should be 7 metres at ground floor level. The preferred uses are B1C and B8, and units on the ground floor should have large floor plates. The proposed ground and intermediate layout here on the left shows that there is a large floor plate for the B1 and B1C and B8 mixed use there. To the corner with Ilderton Road and Rowland Street is the B1C affordable units as well. And here in the table, you can see that there's an increase of 609 square metres on the existing provision of space at the ground floor. This slide shows a section through of the ground and intermediate floor levels. As you can see here, there's a minimum of 7 metres height for floor to ceiling height for the B8 use. And here is the ground and intermediate layout for the affordable units at 3.5 metres. This 7 metres adheres to the aims and objectives of OKR 16 for the horizontal mix. And it's also noted that the B floor space here will provide up to 76 full-time jobs. It's considered that this part of the development is exemplar and adds to the benefits of the overall scheme. Now moving on to the residential aspect and the proposed unit mix. Development is 253 residential units. As mentioned before, 35.75% affordable housing. When this is broken down, it's 27.97% social rented and 7.78% for intermediate. Of this breakdown, 76 residential units are designed as affordable housing, 58 is social rented and 18 intermediate rent. Of the affordable provision, 100% of this is dual aspect, and in the overall development, 69.5% of the development is dual aspect. Here is the floor layouts. Typically on the left is a lower floor layout, and on the right is the layout of the tower block. The southern block has 10 units per floor, with each core having direct access to the external deck. As the gallery forms 2 wings to the block, this enables the affordable units to achieve 100% dual aspect, as we can see here, here, and here, the dual aspect. And the tower block has a maximum of 8 units per core. Here's the site within the OKR draft strategy. It is noted that in the forthcoming amended AAP, that sites located on the eastern side of Ilderton Road, it's recommended that buildings are higher on junctions leading up towards New Bermondsey to the northeast of the site. This site is located on a big junction here with Ilderton Road and Rowland Street, and is considered that adheres to the aims and objectives of the emerging AAP amendment. Here is a view of the tower from Ilderton Road. As stated before, there's a 6-storey block above the podium, which equates to 9 stories above ground at the southern end. At the northeast end is the 25-storey block above the podium, which is 28 stories above ground. Here is a bird's eye view of the development, and with the closest neighbours nearby. So beyond the railway line here, we have Penshurst House, which is part of the Winslade estate. They have windows, rear windows looking towards the development, and on the left-hand side we have an application that received planning permission and is currently being built out on Ilderton Road. The submitted daylight and sunlight assessment shows that of all the affected windows of neighbouring occupiers, all the windows achieve at least 0.7 times their former value, which is just below BRE standards, which requires 0.8. This, although just being below, does not constitute a development that would materially harm the amenity of neighbouring occupiers. The siding and the design of the tower at the northeast corner casts a slender shadow, and this is evident at the higher parts where the reduced massing comes in as the development gets higher. So this, in the transient shadowing, it casts a slender shadow and therefore does not hang a long time with shadows around neighbouring properties. Here is a breakdown of how the internal community space works, child space and public open space. Here highlighted in the green is the children's play space, which is predominantly on the podium as well as on the 7th floor terrace of the southern block. The community space is around the perimeter of the podium space, and also there's an ecological terrace on the 7th floor of the tower block. Here where my mouse is, when I get my mouse onto it, here is where the room was moved out. We, as part of the amendments sought by the committee members at pre-briefing, it was decided that to achieve more internal play space, we would have a 3 three-bedroom unit removed at podium level of 112 square metres, and this is to provide a 128 square metre internal room. So this will be a play space that can be used during when there's rain. So so it's not compromised when it's raining on the podium. There can still be play space afforded to children within the development. Here is a section through of the public open space, the ecological terrace and the podium and the play space on the 7th floor terrace. So on the left is the open space on Ilderton Road, Rowland Street corner. This is the ecological terrace on the 7th floor. This is the podium and amenity and children's play space. The 7th floor play space on the southern block, and then coming down onto Surratt Street here on the right. Here is a breakdown of how the requirements add up. So the shortfall in private amenity space is 459. This is made up in the communal amenity space. As noted before, whilst there is a shortfall in countable play space, officers are satisfied that the removal of the three-bedroom unit on the podium level to accommodate an internal play space, providing an extra 204 square metres of amenity play space included with the existing 7th floor communal amenity space, would in theory provide an over-provision of 7 square metres of children's play space. And whilst it is noted that you cannot count to the internal space towards the overall count.
Play space. God, they're clever.
Communal amenity space and children's play space.
Sorry, can you forgive me, but can you pause for a second? Can I ask if we have guests listening that your mic is muted? I understood, Gerald, that we could do that anyway. We just ensure all mics are muted, please. I can see a few mics which are not muted, but if you could ensure your mics are muted. Thank you. Please go ahead, Troy.
Yes. So just to reiterate, officers are satisfied that this would not contrive the development of its exemplar scheme. Officers are satisfied that this provides another option when there is when the podium is raining and there's still provides another place for children to play internally. Whilst it's noted that there is a shortfall of public open space, the development is close by to several pockets of open space. It is within 500 metres of the Remington Park open space park. It is within 300 metres of Bridge House Meadows. The new recently created Pat Hickson Garden is a couple of minutes walk north of the site, and approximately 7 minutes northwest of the site is Bramcote Park. The existing frontage along Ilderton Road is very ad hoc. It consists mainly of hoardings, and of note is there is only a maximum of 1.8 metres width walking past the site on the footpath. It feels like you're on the road most of the time. The development would, The development would set back the building from the Ilderton Road line at 5 metres. So therefore the public realm and the footpath width will be 5 metres. And this enables new street trees to be planted to enhance the public realm. Here we can see the little entrances to the B1C and B8 units creating active frontages along Ilderton Road. And to the north of the site here, underneath the tower block is where 453 cycle spaces for residents are contained, and this is they're all secured and locked, and this is in accordance with the draft London plan standards. And to finish off, here's a few images of how the development will look. So on the left here we have looking at the development northbound along Ilderton Road. On the right is southbound along Ilderton Road. And then the final two images are looking from the southwest and the north, southeast and the northeast from the London Borough of Lewisham. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Troy. Thank you very much indeed. Now, are there any questions from the committee? And please, colleagues, if we could keep our questions on specific policy-related issues or technical details within the report itself, and the more substantive questions, if we could save for the applicant. Any questions?
Can I ask
Marky.
a question?
I see Marky. Marky first. Followed by yourself, Catherine. Marky, Councillor Ewens.
Hello. Sorry, can you hear me, Martin?
We can.
Yeah. So can I ask, please? So it's a little bit of a recurring theme, so therefore no surprises that I will ask this question. But I was conscious. I know that the calculations actually have changed slightly because of the in the amendment. But I went through the calculation before I looked at the amendment and noted at that stage that we were only within this development providing something like 20. So it's changed perhaps like a couple of the order of a couple of percent, but 27% of the communal amenity space and play space combined. So we are 73% short on the community amenity space, public amenity space and play space. I note that Remington Park, I don't actually, I mean, I know where Remington Park is, but I've never heard so much about Remington Park as I have by attending planning committee, because it seems that almost all developments in this area allude to Remington Park. Can I ask how big Remington Park is, please? And it probably is not details that you can give at this stage, but I would also be interested if you can answer the question in how many previous applications have we relied on the existence of public own
long question, Councillor.
Council open space at Remington Park as sort of to assuage concerns about the lack of public amenity space, alluding to the fact that in this one, as I say, we are actually 73% short of combined public space and play space, give or take. And I know that, yeah, give or take.
Sure. Actually, who's going to respond?
Shall I come back in on that one?
Very good.
Yeah. So the part of the reason for doing the public space and communal space briefing notes, which was circulated with the addendum, and it is to give a analysis of progress against the master plan requirements for both communal space and public open space. The park, which we have referred to in a number of schemes, is Bramcote Park rather than Brimington. So Brimington is slightly further to the south, on the other side of Old Kent Road. Bramcote Park is in the Bonamy estate, and that's probably about a hectare and a half or so in size. So that's about 15,000 square meters. The park itself is in need of some attention, and we have done a sort of engagement with the Bonamy estate residents around livable neighbourhoods, which Pip was heavily involved in. That was part of a bid for some funding from TfL around that area, and no surprise, there was a lot of feedback about improving and providing green and open space and doing extra planting in the area. So we feel that directing some of this money, which we're collecting from developers, towards that park space would actually enable us to achieve that, because we don't have the money to do that, and we don't actually own that space. It's owned by a housing association, which is one of the reasons I think it probably hasn't been maintained as well as it might have been. And certainly the putting the walk distance from this site to all the parks in the area, one of the reasons for doing that was to give a sense of how far away they are from this site. We aren't reliant entirely on existing open space. There are new spaces being created in the area and in this particular master plan and in neighbouring master plans. One of them has recently been completed, which is Parks and Gardens. There is a proposal for another park space which joins Ilderton Road to Hatcham Road, and of course a bit further away we have the proposal for the Gasworks Park on land that we own, where we would improve connections to that space. In terms of this particular site, and your question about to what degree we're providing communal and play space on the site does meet all its communal space requirements, and the communal space is calculated from 50 square metres per development, plus the shortfall from private. So as set out in the report, that space is provided on site. So there isn't a shortfall of communal space within the development, but there is a shortfall of play space, as Troy set out, of about 200 square metres. So there would still be a payment for that. But we did discuss with the applicant the provision of additional internal play or communal area, which, as Troy said in his presentation, that's why a 3-bed flat has been converted to that space. And if you look at where that is on the plan, we think that would work very well because it faces directly into that the main communal space on the plan. But we aren't counting that for the purposes of the play space. We're still making charging an in lieu payment for that shortfall. It will be provided, but we will still receive money for the shortfall because we don't count that in our policy at the moment.
Right. Okay. Thank you for your response. And you may want to ask a similar question, I'm sure, Councillor Newlands, of the applicant later on, but that's fine. Can I now move on to Councillor Kath Whittam, please? You have a question on the report? Yeah?
Yes. This new flat that's been made available for the play space, has that come out of the affordable housing quantum or from the private housing quantum? Doesn't appear to have made much odds to the percentage of affordable housing offer. So can you just confirm that's come from the private section?
Yes, the flat was an intermediate 3-bed flat. So what they've done is they've converted a 3-bed private flat into an intermediate flat. So they've removed an affordable flat, and they've converted what was a private flat into a replacement affordable flat. So there's been no net loss.
Okay.
No.
And can you confirm that this will be fully insulated so that the flats around this flat won't have any noise issues?
Yes, so in fitting it out, it would be fitted out with that in mind, and the applicant can probably say more about that when they do their presentation.
Okay, and can I just ask one more question about the open space? The diagram that you've shown on page 11 of the supplemental agenda with the big circle and the green bits in, I think it's very disingenuous to put that big bit of green on the right hand side, which is in Lewisham, and therefore we have no control over that. Or I hope we wouldn't be spending our money on Lewisham facilities.
No, it's my assumption that we're not spending our money on Lewisham's facilities, but we are speaking to Lewisham about how they're planning their area with a view to making sure that we make the most of open space in both areas. I think Lewisham will probably only spend their money in Lewisham, but we and PIP have had two meetings in the last week with Lewisham officers and also with the developers of the neighbouring sites. That's looking at a number of things, which is also looking at the connections below the railway line through towards Lewisham, some of which we are the Highways Authority for. And if you know some of those roads that connect through to Lewisham, they're in a pretty poor state. So one of the things we'd like to do is make sure that in accessing parks, both in Southwark, but also in Lewisham, that the walk routes for children or for their parents to those parks is as safe and as welcoming as it can be. And I think some of those connections at the moment are in a very poor condition. So we would certainly be thinking about spending money on improving our bits of those roads as they link through to Lewisham. But the money on the parks, we're spending on our own parks, not on Lewisham's parks.
Sorry,
Can I just ask
hold on a second, hold
little
on.
supplemental?
You've asked 3 questions, and I'm conscious of time.
I've asked 2.
You've had 3 questions. So I'm not going to take another question from you. What I want to do is encourage you to ask those questions of the applicant. Okay, so I'm going to move on straight away to Councillor O'Brien. I've got to move on to Councillor O'Brien. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Could you just confirm for us that this land is currently deemed strategic industrial land? Is that correct? Yeah, okay, so Troy's nodding.
Troy?
Are there any specific requirements under the London plan for delivery of affordable housing to use strategic industrial land? Are we policy compliant with our 35%, 35%?
Yeah, in terms of perhaps I come on that. In terms of the policy position in respect to this strategic industrial land, the GLA have confirmed that they support the approach that we're taking in the area action plan of mixing residential with industrial in the way that Troy set out in his presentation, and they have been supportive of the approach on this particular site as well, both in terms of the use and also the level of affordable housing that we are seeking to deliver on the site. And it's something we've discussed in committee before, that within the area action plan area, we have established 35% as the minimum for affordable housing in the area, and GLA have accepted that approach.
Okay, are there further questions for committee members who have not asked a question? And it should ideally be technical questions on the report and questions which reasonably the applicant is unable to respond to. Are there any further questions? In that case, then I'll move on. I will move on to, are there objectors here? If the clerk could confirm. Hello? Yes, clerk, Tim?
Yeah, I've not, hang on a minute, just a minute.
Yes.
I'm just looking at the guidance.
It's not a problem. So there's this wonderful virtual environment. I can't see faces. I can see a few, but
Gerald, are you with us, Gerald, currently?
Sorry, I'm looking it up. It should say it on the chair's guidance notes.
Yes, that's what I was trying to find too.
Chair,
no one has registered to speak according to the chair's guidance. Sorry, Gerald. Yeah, no one's registered.
There's no one registered to speak, Chair.
There was only one objection to the scheme during consultation.
Right. I just want to be sure, because once I move on, I've moved on. Right here, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In that case, that's okay. If I can now move on to the applicant or applicant agent, I'm assuming that Roger Hepherb, is it? HGH Consulting, is that right? Or the applicant?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. Roger Heifer, HGH Consulting.
Excellent, excellent. And it's just yourself, is it?
Yes, it is, but I've got quite a number of technical experts.
I note here, yes. I know. I want to read them all out, or maybe I won't read them all out for the moment. If committee members have questions after your presentations, I'll then note the names here. But can I again just ask you to introduce yourself? Once you've done that, I will give you 3 minutes to make your presentation. But I say go, and at 30 seconds prior to the end, I'll indicate there's 30 seconds remaining. So again, Roger, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So my name is Roger Heifer, HGH Consulting. I'm the planning consultant for Leathams, who are the owners of the site and the applicants.
Excellent, thank you very much. I'm going to now give you 3 minutes, start the clock now. There we go.
That's fine. Chair, I think just 4 points from me. Point 1 is that I'm obviously pleased that there is no objector speaking today. That is no surprise, because as Troy has said, there was only one objection from a resident of the Winslade estate in Lewisham. And I think that is a reflection of the fact that we did an awful lot of public consultation. We held two-day exhibitions at the primary school. We sent notifications to 1,900 addresses. We had 12 face-to-face meetings with various key stakeholders, including cabinet members, ward members, TRA representatives, both from Southwark and from Lewisham, the primary school, Millwall Football Club. So we really talked to an awful lot of people before we launched into the scheme. The second point I want to make is that it's an ambitious scheme, and it genuinely tries to create proper industrial warehousing space with housing above. This is sort of real heavy duty space. It's not the sort of studio-y, office-y type of space that applicants sometimes try and persuade you to accept. And it springs from 3 things. One is Leathams themselves are in the storage and distribution business, so they understand these things and they've been very hands-on. Second, from the outset, we've had Savills industrial department advising us on just what the market would be interested in here. And they believe that the sort of final mile distribution companies would be really very interested in space here. And thirdly, we have used McCrane Lavington, who have more experience than just about anyone of co-location schemes, both in the UK and in continental Europe. So the space has been designed to be very versatile, but capable of accommodating big scale activity. My third point is
30 seconds.
We have tried very hard to achieve or surpass all the relevant standards and regulations. I won't elaborate on that because it's covered in Troy's report in detail, but I will fourthly just pick up on the soundproofing of the play area space. I would suggest that's definitely an important matter, but it's a matter of detail and really ought to be conditioned. Thank you.
Your time's up. Thank you very much indeed. And I'll stop my machine if I can, of course. Can I first of all go to Councillor Whittam? You have a question.
Yes, the horseshoe shape of the smaller block. The horseshoe bit faces east, I believe. Is that correct?
No, the open part of the horseshoe, if you like, faces north.
Faces north. That's west.
So the three arms of the horseshoe are west, south, and east.
Okay, I note that most of the units are dual aspect, but can you tell us about the lower floors of the horseshoe bit, sort of at the depth of the horseshoe bit, and the sunlight that's available to those windows?
Yeah, first of all, 100% of the social rented housing units are dual aspect. and about 2/3 of the scheme overall is dual aspect. I think on that question, which is essentially about daylight and sunlight, may I bring in, Chair, my expert on this subject, which is Liam Dunford.
Okay, yep. If I can invite Liam to join the meeting, and if I could ask himself to introduce himself and his title, we can respond to the question. Liam?
Good morning, Liam Dunford, Point 2 Surveyors, Specialist Daylight Surveyor.
Very good.
We've been working on this scheme now for quite a few years, and the daylight has always been a concern from first principles. When we were going through the design process, we were very keen, my input was quite paramount with the architects to ensure that all the rooms, so far as possible, meet BRE guidance. What this meant was that as the design developed, we found that some of the living kitchen diners, where light is often much more important than perhaps the bedrooms and the bathrooms, ensure that a lot of these became dual aspect. And when we've got the dual aspect scenario, it's ensuring that light comes in from more than one window from different elevations to ensure that we've got a good level of retained daylight. I think I know specific to your question, you're talking about the horseshoe or the U-shaped element of the scheme. Now, you probably don't have my drawing in front of you, but we've got 2 living rooms that sit in the bottom of that horseshoe, which I suspect is where you're most concerned about and where your question comes from. We've got these referenced R114302 if you have my report to hand, and what we get there is we've got average daylight factors of 2.8 and 2.6 respectively for these 2 rooms. Now the minimum standard for a living room is 1.5. So in that place where it is, the massing is most enclosed, we see we've got sort of very good, if not exceptional, levels of internal daylight. We could make the windows a bit smaller, down to 1.5, and still be compliant. But in this case, we're not. We're well above guidance. So overall, the scheme works really well for internal daylight levels. But it has been a consideration from early in the design process, rather than something what we've had to come to later on. Does that answer your question with a little bit of a framework?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. And if there are other questions, Councillor Whittam? I thought there might be other questions for the applicant. I'm giving you the opportunity now. Okay.
I'm okay at the moment.
Fair enough. Other committee members, other questions? I'm noting we had more questions for officers, which is interesting. Are there other questions? Other questions? In that case, I may ask a question myself. In that case,
Chair, sorry.
Yes.
I think Councillor King has indicated with the icon.
Oh, the icon. Oh, I can't actually see on my screen, Councillor King. It's all right. Somewhere. Go ahead, Councillor King. Go ahead.
I've had to switch my video off, so I can't literally raise my hand at the moment. I had a question. There was a really good overview of the engagement and consultation work that you've done locally, and I was just wondering if you could summarise any issues that were raised and how they were addressed as part of the design process.
Well, I think it's fair to say that overwhelmingly people who responded were supportive of the scheme. I can't recall any particular issue coming up. The one objection that came in, as I mentioned, from a resident of the Winslade estate was essentially concern about height and the sort of changed setting of the Winslade estate that would give rise to. But in general, no, everyone was very supportive of the principle of re-providing industrial and warehousing space with housing above. There was no concern apart from, as I've just mentioned, about height and density. I think everyone accepts that this is a part of the Old Kent Road area which is in the process of changing significantly, and this form of development is entirely appropriate. I think it's probably one other point, so people have been concerned to ensure that the industrial activity and the residential activity should be sufficiently separated, and we've gone to a lot of trouble to ensure that that is the case. So you'll see on the drawings that the residential entrances are well removed from the industrial entrances and designed to be pleasant spaces.
Cool.
Very good, very good. So are there further questions for the applicants? I may ask maybe just one or two questions very quickly in regards to play space for children. First of all, I want to acknowledge the removal of the dwelling which allowed for the increased play space, but there's still a deficit. And I wonder, as a result of your consultation and discussing amenity space, well, what response did you receive from local people about amenity space and its importance to them? Can you maybe give us some feedback on that?
Yes, I mean, to be honest, Chair, I don't recall the subject coming up.
Right? Okay, no. Right. Okay, right.
I think people assumed that we would make responsible provision, and they were aware of the council's standards and requirements, and I don't think anyone took it beyond that.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting observation. And then secondly, the contribution you are making as a result of that deficit, which is, I believe, a one-off contribution. Okay. Would you anticipate that your building would exist for at least 50 years?
I certainly hope so.
There you go. Right, I just want to be sure. And taking note of your contribution over a 50-year period, I think you might agree with me then that's an extremely good deal. Then you make a single contribution of a few £1,000s, but the building will be around for an extended period of time. And I simply bring to give light to that. There's been a series of applications which have been put forward, and I know it's our policy at the moment, but I do wonder if buildings are going to be around for an extended period of time, whether or not is it appropriate for a single payment to be made rather than a payment that it's made annually as a contribution to green spaces, amenity spaces, which will benefit the residents in these buildings. But I simply make the observation, not for you, but it's just an observation which I suspect will stimulate debate elsewhere. And if there are no further questions from the committee, I'm going to thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If I can now move on to, is there a supporter of the scheme who live within 100 metres of the application site? Present. And I'm looking at my notes. I don't see one on my notes, but just if the clerk can confirm a supporter has not arisen since the notes were compiled.
I can confirm that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now then move on to ward councillors. Is there a ward councillor present?
Chair?
Yep.
Chair, yes, I'm here.
Councillor, can I ask you first of all, councillor, to introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm Councillor Richard Livingstone, one of the ward councillors for Old Kent Road ward.
Welcome, Councillor Livingstone. As you know the routine here, I'll give you 3 minutes to make your presentation. 30 seconds prior to the end, I'll indicate 30 seconds remaining. You may begin your presentation now.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, as you know, as ward councillors, we're generally supportive of development that's providing for the significant social housing need there is in the ward. This is a development which brings 58 new social homes to the ward and is therefore very helpful. I think there's 2 points in particular I particularly wanted to cover. I think first of all, committee will be aware of lots of past discussions have been about proper industrial space and how do you get proper industrial space as part of mixed developments. And I think of all the schemes I've seen so far in the ward, this is the one which does it best. It clearly has been designed from the point of view of working out how do you get the industrial space right first and have that very large space for distribution as part of its development, and a clever routing of goods vehicles in one road and out the other through the building along by the railway line to enable a lot of things to happen there. So I think some very clever design which I think is useful in terms of keeping the industrial heritage of the area whilst also providing the homes that are needed. I think the other thing as a ward councillor, probably the biggest concern I have of this site at the moment is the narrowness of the pavement along by the site. At the moment, you've got a wall and some hoardings which come pretty much straight up to the pavement. It's a very narrow pavement at this space. And this development, thankfully, is allowing greater pavement width there, which I think will be an improvement to the environment of Ilderton Road. There aren't many residents of ours that live very close to the site. However, we did early on, because Leathams have been engaging with us as ward councillors, point them in the direction of the Winslade estate on the other side of the borough boundary in New Cross ward, and we had talked to their ward councillors, and so I know sort of second hand from that they have been talking to the local residents there, because clearly they're the ones that will be affected by the height issues there. But I didn't really want to add much more other than to say, I think overall as ward councillors we're supportive of this because it does some good positive things which I think are will add to the environment and address some issues which haven't been addressed by other or haven't been addressed well by other developments in the area.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Livingstone, for your presentation. Are there questions to Councillor Livingstone? Is there a question? And forgive me if I can't see immediately. Are there questions? In that case, in Councillor Livingstone, your charisma knows no end. It has stunned them into silence. Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, thank you very much indeed. If I may now return to the committee, but are there any additional questions for either the officers or applicants so far? Right here then. And with referencing to soundproofing and so on, I recall that there was a issue whether or not we might condition. Councillor Whittam, do you want to make any comment on that?
I think it would be a good idea because that is going to be internal to the block. So noise will carry upwards and through the walls into living spaces. So I think if we can condition the soundproofing as to be sort of industrial standard or whatever.
I might need some advice on the wording for that condition. Yeah, is it maybe the legal officer or one planning officer wish to comment?
Yes, Chair. I mean, it's
thank you.
Should be fine to put a condition in, so we can, but perhaps just agree the detail of that with environmental protection colleagues. So it will be a variation on a standard noise condition that we get from environmental protection, but we'll go back to them and if you, we can forward that to committee members as well after committee.
Right. Okay. So it's noted here as a informative. That's duly noted. And it's like, are there further comments from the committee? Thank you, Councillor Whittam. Are there further comments from the committee? Roger, yes, go ahead. Yes.
Chair, could I just add, I think when it comes to the wording of the condition, the GLA will no doubt have an input to make as well, because it is important to bear in mind that they do count this, so they are prepared to count this as amenity space. The Southwark policy is different from the GLA policy in that respect.
This is true. There's a reason why, of course, individual councils are allowed to put together their own local plan. It's in full conformity with the London plan. But I think we are discussing from a local perspective. I wonder if the legal officer wishes to make any comment on that, just so we're clear about this. Margaret, is she there? I can't see Margaret. Hello, Margaret. Yes, I can see your digital hand now, but yes. I can't see you.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, do you want to make a comment on that? Yes.
Well, I would think that Southwark is within its rights to calculate any deficits according to the the SPD, the residential, the
supplementary
section 106 SPD, because there are areas in policy where we do differ from the Mayor of London policy. Obviously, the development plan consists of the London plan, but we are entitled to make that difference in our calculations. I just wanted to make one point which I wasn't able to completely bottom out with the planning officer this morning when in email, and that is that I did raise the point that I thought the internal ventilation condition was missing, which was referred to in paragraph 252 of the planning report. So I don't know if Colin or Troy can just confirm whether that condition is missing and if it's intended to be included.
All righty, thank you, Margaret. Colin or Troy? Colin?
Yeah, I'll have a look through the conditions again, but if that one's missing, then we'll add that in. Apologies if that is missing in the document there.
And for the purpose of this committee, though, just so we're clear, so we note that it is missing, but the wording we will leave to yourself, but it's informative from this committee. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. We'll make sure of that. In that case, and can I just return to the committee members? Are there further comments you wish to make? Otherwise, I'll move to a resolution.
Chair. Councillor Newins has indicated.
Please, if he, Councillor Morell, if you wish to speak.
Newins.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Newins. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Newins, if you.
Hello. I'd like to ask, please, if there is anything at all that can be done. But I note the chair has already also raised the point that the building is going to be there for 50 years and we get one-off payment, which is not equivalent to the cost of the land that is required to compensate for this in excess of 70% shortfall in public space and, apologies, of public space and play space. Is there anything at all that we can do through conditioning or some other way that we can actually increase the contributions from the applicant, as they are obviously sort of very much lower than the true cost of providing that space, and they consist of a sort of one-off payment, which is kind of quite paltry, really, in comparison with the 70% shortfall that we're actually being asked to agree to.
All righty, well, that's of course an interesting point. Guidance would be useful. Maybe I'll start with Margaret first of all, and then go to planning. Margaret, yes.
Well, Chair, my advice is that there is currently no policy support for that approach. And until there is such policy support, we can't simply impose those kinds of obligations on developers.
Unfortunately, Councillor Newins is 100% correct, which is why I've mentioned it as part of a narrative, a discussion for another place, but it's clearly a significant deficit, particularly in relation to the Old Kent Road, and the likelihood that we need to create green spaces and in order to accommodate homes and industrial and healthy living, we will need to invest in green spaces. But equally, if the homes are not owned by the council, then of course it's reasonable to expect that the developers will contribute, I would have thought. But it's a discussion not for this meeting. Raise it simply as a narrative for further discussion elsewhere. But I'm grateful for you taking it up, though. I'm grateful. Now, are there any other hands up? Have I missed anyone else here?
Just sorry, Chair. The legal officer's still got her hand up. It may be on a previous point.
I couldn't see it, but I wondered. Yes, Margaret. Yes.
I think it's
apologies.
Down now,
apologies. That's my inability to use the technology. Sorry.
That's okay. That's an item. Thank you. In that case, Oh, Roger has, yes, please, go ahead, yes.
Chair, thank you. Sorry, could I just put the record straight that there is not a shortfall in terms of public open space, because what we have agreed is that we will make a financial contribution of around about £250,000 towards the provision of open space in the action area plan area, which is exactly what policy requires.
I'm going to resist the temptation to engage in a dialogue right now. I'm going to resist that. I'm going to acknowledge your response. Okay, I'm going to acknowledge that. But this is set a discussion for elsewhere, and I think I'm specifically referring to a communal space, which is specifically for those residents. And if there is a deficit, then of course, how do we take care of that? But that's fair enough. I will resist the urge. I am going to move on to a resolution, and if members would bear with me, I will get up the resolution as follows. I'd like to move that we adopt the officer's recommendations set out in paragraphs 1 to 4 of the report and page 11 of the agenda pack, that the planning permission be granted subject to conditions and referral to the Mayor of London and applicant entering into an appropriate legal agreement by no later than the 15th of December 2020, that the environmental information be taken into account as required by Regulation 30 of the Town and Country Planning Act, Environmental Assessment, Regulation 2017, that following issues of the decision to be confirmed, that the Director of Planning shall be place a statement on the statutory register pursuant to Regulation 30 of the Town and County Planning Environmental Impact Assessment Regulation, and that for the purposes of Regulation 30(1)(d), the main reason and consideration on which the local planning authority's decision is based shall be set out in this report. In the event that the requirement of one are not met by the 15th of December 2020, that the Director of Planning be authorised to refuse planning permission, if appropriate, for the reasons set out in paragraph 277 of the report, and of course, notwithstanding the additional condition that we've discussed earlier. Does a committee member wish to second this resolution?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Whittam. Can I now move to the vote? Now, before we proceed to a vote, any member of the committee may speak to the motion or propose an amendment. Do you wish to speak to it? Very good, thank you for that. In that case, I shall move on. We'll now move to the vote. I will call on the voting members of this committee by name and ask them to confirm whether they vote in favour or against this motion or wish to abstain. So I'll start with Councillor Kath Whittam. Are you for, against, or wish to abstain?
I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Barry Hargrove, for, against, or wish to abstain?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah King, for, against, or wish to abstain?
For.
Councillor Hamish McCullum, for, against, or wish to abstain?
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Darren Morell, for, against, or wish to abstain?
For, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Margie Nguyen, for, against, or wish to abstain?
Abstain, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Damien O'Brien, for, against, or wish to abstain?
For.
And I'm Councillor Martin Seaton, and I vote for the motion. So the motion is carried, and thank you all for your contribution. Thank you all for your contribution. Now, what I will do at this point is take a 5-minute comfort break, and then we'll return to the next item. Thank you very much.